Have you ever stood alone, facing the most painful rejection on what should have been one of the proudest days of your life? Imagine being told you don't belong at your own child's graduation by someone who once shared your dreams. Stay with me, because what these Marines did next will show you why the Brotherhood of Warriors extends far beyond the battlefield. Welcome to Honor Echoes, where we bring you powerful stories of veterans whose courage extends beyond their service. If you want to witness more moments where military brotherhood changes lives, hit that subscribe button now and join our community that honors those who served. Now let me share a story that demonstrates why Marines never leave one of their own behind. I still remember the weight of my dress blues that morning, how they felt both familiar and foreign after all these years. The fabric was crisp, the buttons polished to a mirror shine. My fingers traced the emblems I'd earned through blood and sacrifice. Today wasn't about war, though. Today was about peace. Watching my daughter cross the stage to receive her college diploma. I hadn't seen Emily in person for nearly 2 years. Our relationship had been reduced to occasional video calls and text messages, casualties of a bitter divorce that had torn our family apart 5 years ago. My ex-wife, Karen, had made it her mission to erase me from our daughter's life, painting me as a broken man who returned from my 3rd deployment, more ghost than father. Perhaps there was some truth to that. The things I'd seen in Fallujah had changed me. The brothers I'd lost had taken pieces of my soul with them. I wasn't the same man who had kissed my pregnant wife goodbye before deploying, but I had fought my demons. Fought them hard, therapy session after therapy session, rebuilding myself not just for me, but for Emily. When Emily called to invite me to her graduation, her voice trembled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Dad, I want you there," she said. "Mom doesn't know I called you, but this is my day and I need you both there." I booked my flight that night. I pressed my uniform. I practiced my smile in the mirror, the one that hid the pain, the one that showed only pride. I rehearsed what I would say when I saw Karen again after all these years. The campus was beautiful that May morning. Sunlight filtered through ancient oaks, casting dappled shadows across the quad where hundreds of chairs had been arranged in neat rows. I arrived early, 2 hours before the ceremony was set to begin. I wanted to acclimate, to steady my nerves, to find my place without causing a scene. I spotted Karen immediately. Even after 5 years, I could pick her silhouette from a crowd of thousands. She was directing Emily's grandparents to their seats, her hands moving with the same purposeful efficiency I once admired. She hadn't seen me yet. Emily appeared in her black graduation gown, the tassel of her cap dancing in the spring breeze. Her eyes found mine, and for a moment, the years of absence vanished. She was still my little girl, the one who used to ride on my shoulders, who used to ask me to check under her bed for monsters. Now she was a woman, about to begin her own life, and I had missed so much of her journey. She rushed toward me, arms outstretched, and I folded her into an embrace that tried to express 5 years of unspoken love. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world," I replied, swallowing the knot in my throat. Our moment was shattered by Karen's voice, sharp as broken glass. "What are you doing here, James?" I turned to face my ex-wife, straightening to my full height, the Marine in me responding to the challenge in her tone. "I'm here for our daughter's graduation, Karen. Emily invited me." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. She grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her slightly away from me. "You weren't supposed to contact him," she hissed at our daughter. "Mom, please," Emily pleaded, her earlier joy crumbling under the weight of her mother's disapproval. "I want you both here. This is my day." "He doesn't belong here," Karen said, loud enough for nearby families to turn and stare. He wasn't here for the parent-teacher conferences, or the college tours, or the late nights when you were stressed about exams. He doesn't get to show up in his uniform and play the proud father now. Each accusation landed like a physical blow. The worst part was that I couldn't argue with her facts. I hadn't been there for those moments. What she couldn't understand was that I'd carried the weight of those absences every single day. "Karen," I started, keeping my voice low and steady, the way I'd been taught to communicate in high-stress situations. "This isn't about us. It's about Emily." "No," she cut me off. "You lost the right to be here when you chose the Marines over your family. When you came back broken and couldn't even hold a job. When you couldn't be the husband and father we needed." People were staring now. Emily's face had drained of color, her graduation day transforming into exactly what she had feared, another battlefield in her parents' ongoing war. "Dad, maybe this was a mistake," Emily whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I thought we could all be adults about this, just for one day." I felt the familiar hollowness spreading in my chest, the same emptiness that had nearly consumed me after losing Lance Corporal Martinez in that ambush outside Ramadi. I was losing another battle, and this time, the casualty would be my relationship with my daughter. "You need to leave," Karen said firmly, positioning herself between Emily and me. "This is a day for family, and you made your choice years ago about what was more important to you." I looked at Emily, silently asking her to defend me, to say she wanted me to stay. But she just looked at the ground, shoulders slumped in defeat. 22 years old, about to graduate summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry, and reduced to a child caught between warring parents. "I'll go," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "I don't want to ruin your day, Emily." I turned to leave, each step away from my daughter, feeling like I was trudging through sand with a full combat load. The dress blues that had once been a source of such pride now felt like an imposter's costume. I didn't belong here, not in this happy place, not in these moments of civilian celebration. I had made it halfway across the quad when I heard someone call my name, Staff Sergeant Reynolds. I turned to see a face I recognized instantly, though it had aged since I'd seen it last. Probably Sergeant by now, Jackson Martinez, younger brother of the Marine I couldn't save. He was in his dress blues, just like me, the sunlight glinting off his medals. "Jackson," I said, the surprise momentarily pushing aside my humiliation. "What are you doing here?" "My niece is graduating today," he explained. Then his expression grew serious as he took in my demeanor. "Are you all right, Staff Sergeant?" Before I could answer, fabricate some excuse about needing fresh air, Jackson's eyes flicked over my shoulder. I followed his gaze and saw Karen still glaring in my direction, her arm around Emily's shoulders. "Family issues," I said simply. A Marine understood that some battles couldn't be won, not with any tactics we were taught. Jackson nodded slowly, then pulled out his phone. "Give me 5 minutes," he said cryptically, stepping away to make a call. I should have continued walking to my rental car. I should have accepted defeat and driven back to the airport, caught the next flight home, and added this to the long list of moments I'd missed in my daughter's life. But something in Jackson's determined expression made me wait. 4 minutes later, I heard them before I saw them. The rhythmic sound of dress shoes on pavement, moving in perfect synchronization. I turned to see something that stopped my breath. Coming around the corner of the Humanities building was a column of Marines in dress blues, 15 of them marching in perfect formation. At their head was Master Sergeant Davis, my old platoon leader, a man who had pulled me out of more than one firefight. They halted 10 paces from where I stood, and Davis approached alone, rendering a perfect salute. "Staff Sergeant Reynolds," he said formally. "Permission to join you at this graduation ceremony." I returned the salute automatically, muscle memory taking over. "What is this, Master Sergeant?" I asked, my voice hoarse with emotion. "Your daughter invited her father to her graduation," Davis replied, "and Marines never stand alone." I looked past him to the formation. Some faces I recognized, men I'd served with in Iraq and Afghanistan. Others were strangers to me, younger Marines who had likely heard my name but never served under me. It didn't matter. They were here, standing at attention, a physical representation of the oath we had all taken. Never leave a Marine behind. "How did you know?" I asked, glancing at Jackson. "Emily contacted the Veterans Association 3 weeks ago," Davis explained. "She was worried about how her mother would react to your presence. She asked if a few Marines might attend, to show her mother that you weren't alone, that you were respected. We've been planning this since then." I felt my throat constrict. My daughter had done this for me. Despite the years of absence, despite Karen's influence, she had reached out to ensure I would be welcomed at her graduation. "We're here to escort you to your seat, Staff Sergeant," Davis continued. "With your permission." I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging my throat. Davis turned sharply and barked an order. The formation of Marines split into 2 columns, creating an aisle between them. Davis gestured for me to walk between them, back toward the graduation seating area. As I passed between the rows of Marines, each one rendered a salute. Not to the staff sergeant I had been, but to the father I was trying to be. I returned each salute, my back straightening, my chin lifting with each step. The crowd of families had noticed the commotion now. Hundreds of eyes watched as this procession of dress blues made its way toward the graduation seating. I could see Karen's face, her expression a mixture of disbelief and something else. Perhaps the first flicker of understanding. Emily stood apart from her mother now, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. As I approached, escorted by my brothers in arms, she ran toward me, throwing her arms around my neck. "I'm sorry, Dad," she sobbed against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for," I assured her, holding her tight. "Nothing at all." Master Sergeant Davis stepped forward, addressing Karen directly. His voice was respectful, but carried the unmistakable authority of a man who had commanded others in combat. "Ma'am, Staff Sergeant Reynolds saved my life in Fallujah in 2004. He pulled me from a burning Humvee after an IED strike, suffering third-degree burns on his arms in the process." Davis rolled up his sleeve slightly, revealing a prosthetic hand. "I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for him. He's one of the finest Marines I've ever served with, and one of the finest men I've ever known." One by one, the other Marines stepped forward, each with a story about how I had impacted their lives, teaching them skills that kept them alive in combat, writing letters to their families when they were wounded, sending care packages to their children when they couldn't be home for birthdays. I had never spoken about these things to Karen or Emily. The bond between Marines wasn't something I knew how to explain to civilians. It wasn't just brotherhood. It was a connection forged in the crucible of combat, where trust meant survival and loyalty meant everything. Karen stood silent, her anger visibly deflating as Marine after Marine vouched for my character, my courage, my compassion. These weren't just men in uniform. They were living testimonials to a side of me that my family had never fully seen or understood. The final Marine to speak was Jackson Martinez. He stepped forward, standing tall before Karen and Emily. "Staff Sergeant Reynolds was with my brother Luis when he died," Jackson said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. He held Luis's hand until the end, made sure he wasn't alone. And then he came to our home personally to tell us what happened, how brave Luis had been. He didn't have to do that. Notification officers could have done it. But that's not who James Reynolds is. He carried my brother's body for 2 miles to the extraction point, rather than leave him behind. He's carried the weight of that loss every day since. Jackson turned to me, his eyes meeting mine. "My family doesn't blame you for Luis's death, Staff Sergeant. We never did. You gave us the gift of knowing our son and brother died with dignity, with someone who cared about him by his side. That's something we can never repay." The silence that followed was profound. Even the ambient sounds of the campus seemed to have faded away. In that moment, there was only this circle of understanding that had finally opened to include Karen and Emily. A glimpse into why the Corps had called me away and what it had given me in return. Emily was the first to break the silence. She stepped away from me and approached her mother. "Mom," she said softly, but with newfound conviction, "Dad belongs here today. He's earned his place in that chair beside you. Please." Karen looked at her daughter, then at me, then at the semicircle of Marines standing at parade rest behind me. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the weighing of old hurts against new revelations, of past absences against present support. "All right," she finally said, her voice quiet but clear. "He can stay." Master Sergeant Davis nodded, satisfied, and turned to his men. "Marines, take your positions." The Marines dispersed, not leaving entirely, but taking up positions around the perimeter of the seating area. They would remain for the entire ceremony, standing guard not because there was any threat, but because that's what Marines do for their own. They stand watch, they bear witness, they honor commitments. Karen approached me cautiously, as if seeing me for the first time. "I didn't know," she said simply, "about any of it." "I never told you," I acknowledged. "Some things. I didn't know how to bring home." She nodded, a small gesture of understanding that felt momentous after years of animosity. "Emily reserved a seat for you. It's next to mine." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was an acknowledgement, a crack in the wall that had separated us for so long. The ceremony began 30 minutes later. I sat beside Karen, both of us focused on Emily as she waited for her name to be called. When it finally was, Emily Catherine Reynolds, summa cum laude. I felt Karen's hand briefly touch mine, a reflexive sharing of parental pride that transcended our broken history. As Emily crossed the stage to receive her diploma, a sound rose from the perimeter of the seating area, the Marines calling out a sharp, unified "Hoorah!" The crowd turned in surprise, then broke into applause at this display of military support. Emily's face lit up with a smile that outshone the sun. She raised her diploma high, looking directly at where her mother and I sat side by side, united in this moment by our love for her. After the ceremony, as families mingled and took photos, Emily insisted on pictures with both her parents. Karen didn't object. Then Emily asked for photos with the Marines who had stood up for her father. One by one, they joined us, creating a new kind of family portrait, one that acknowledged both the pain of the past and the possibility of the future. As the crowd began to disperse, Master Sergeant Davis approached me one last time. "Staff Sergeant," he said formally, "the men and I would be honored if you and your family would join us for dinner this evening, to celebrate Emily's achievement properly." I looked to Karen and Emily, leaving the decision to them. "I'd like that," Emily said immediately. Karen hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said. I think I'd like to hear more about this part of your life, James." That evening, seated around tables pushed together in a local restaurant, surrounded by Marines in dress blues and my daughter in her graduation cap, I watched as the barriers between my two worlds began to dissolve. Karen listened as Davis told stories about our time in the Corps. Not just the hardships, but the moments of unexpected humor, the small triumphs, the bonds that sustained us. Emily sat beside Jackson Martinez, the two of them discovering a connection through Luis's memory. Jackson showed her photos of his brother, telling her about the uncle she had never known but who had been her father's brother in all but blood. He would have loved you, Jackson told her. Luis always said your dad talked about you, like you hung the moon and stars. As the night progressed, I watched Karen's perception of me gradually shift. The Marine Corps hadn't taken me away from my family. It had given me another one that had shown up when I needed them most, one that had helped bridge the gap back to my first family. Toward the end of the evening, Karen moved to sit beside me while Emily was engrossed in conversation with the younger Marines. I didn't understand, she said quietly. All these years, I thought you chose them over us. I didn't realize they were the reason you came home at all. Mort, I looked at her. This woman I had once loved enough to promise forever, this mother of my child who had carried so much on her own. I'm sorry I couldn't explain it better, I said. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed when I came back. And I'm sorry I didn't try harder to understand, she replied. I was so angry at what the war took from us that I couldn't see what it gave you, what kept you going. It wasn't reconciliation, not in the romantic sense. Too much water had flowed under that bridge. But it was something equally valuable, the beginning of understanding, of respect, of a new way to be Emily's parents without being enemies. As the night came to a close, Master Sergeant Davis stood and raised his glass. To Emily Reynolds, he toasted. Your father always told us you would do great things. Today proves he was right, and we expect even greater things to come. The Marines raised their glasses in unison, their "Hear, hear," echoing through the restaurant. Emily, flushed with happiness and belonging, raised her own glass. And to the Marines, she countered, who showed me today what it really means to leave no one behind. Later, as we said our goodbyes in the parking lot, Emily hugged me fiercely. Will you come visit me at grad school? She asked. It's only a 3-hour drive from where you live now. Try and keep me away, I promised, my heart fuller than it had been in years. Karen approached, her expression thoughtful. James, she said, Emily's graduation party is tomorrow afternoon at my parents' house. We would like you to come, if you can stay another day. I looked from Karen to Emily, then to the Marines who had changed the course of this day, of my life. Davis nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent command to accept this olive branch. I'd be honored, I said. As I watched Emily and Karen drive away, Master Sergeant Davis clapped a hand on my shoulder. Mission accomplished, Staff Sergeant. I nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm me again. Thank you, I said simply. All of you. No thanks needed, Davis replied. This is what we do, on the battlefield and off it. Jackson Martinez stepped forward, offering his hand. My brother would be proud of you today, he said, for fighting for what matters most. I looked around at these men, my brothers in arms, who had shown up in formation to ensure I wasn't forced to retreat from my daughter's graduation. They had stood guard over my heart when it was most vulnerable, had advanced when I was in danger of falling back, had secured a beachhead for reconciliation where there had been only scorched earth before. Semper Fi, I said, my voice thick with gratitude. Semper Fi. They responded in unison, the promise echoing in the night air. Always faithful. To country. To Corps. To each other. And now, because of them, to the future of my family as well. What happened that day wasn't just about a veteran finding his place at his daughter's graduation. It was about the unbreakable bonds that extend beyond service, that continue to save lives long after the uniform comes off. These Marines didn't just stand in formation. They stood for something greater, the idea that no one who served should ever stand alone. If this story moved you, be sure to subscribe to Honor Echoes and hit that notification bell. Every week, we bring you powerful stories of veterans whose courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood remind us what it truly means to serve. Share this video with someone who needs to understand the meaning of never leave a Marine behind. And remember, The echoes of honor continue long after the battlefield falls silent.